Okay, so when you hear the word farm, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For most of us, it's probably a classic red barn, maybe some chickens running around, a family tending to their crops. It's a nice image, right? But here's the thing. That farm in your head is probably not where the food on your plate actually comes from. So let's dive into the wild transformation of modern farming.
So you've got these two totally different visions. On one hand, you have the farm we all imagine, the one from the storybooks. It's small, it's got a little bit of everything, and it's run by a family. And then you've got the farm that actually feeds us. We're talking massive, industrial-scale operations, usually owned by a giant corporation, and they're just growing one single crop as far as the eye can see.
So the big question is, how did this happen? I mean, how did we go from that little family plot to this globe-spanning industrial system we have today? Well, the answer is a powerful mix of economics and some really game-changing technology.
To really get a handle on this, we've got to look at the two competing ways of doing things at the heart of it all. You've got big ag, the massive corporate farms on one side, and the traditional family farm on the other.
And this really breaks it down for us. A family farm is, owned by a family. Their goal is to feed themselves and maybe sell what's left over. But for agribusiness, it's a completely different game. The number one goal is maximizing profit. And they do that by focusing on what's called monoculture, just growing one big cash crop and swapping out family members for huge, powerful machines.
And check out this chart, because this is where it gets absolutely nuts. In the US, something like 90% of all farms are still technically family farms. But, and this is a huge but, they only produce about 20% of the food. That other 80%, the vast majority of what we eat, comes from that tiny slice of huge commercial agribusinesses. The difference in scale is just staggering.
So what's driving all this? It really boils down to one super important economic idea: economies of scale. The principle is pretty simple. The bigger you get, the cheaper it is to produce every single thing. Think about it, right? Buying seeds for 1 acre costs a certain amount. But if you're buying seeds for 10,000 acres, whoa, you're going to get a massive discount. So there's this huge financial pressure for farms to just get bigger and bigger to compete.
Okay, let's make this a little more real. We're going to follow the incredible journey of a single potato, from a tiny seed in the ground all the way to becoming a French fry, just to see how this whole system ticks.
So every food product goes through what's known as a commodity chain. First, it has to be grown. That's production. Then it gets processed. So our potato gets turned into fries. After that, it's got to be distributed, shipped out. Then it's sold at a store or a restaurant. And finally, the best part, you get to eat it. And at every single step, that potato gets a little more valuable.
Now, if you're a big company trying to make as much money as possible, you're not just going to focus on one of those steps. No way. You're looking at the whole chain. The real money is in controlling as many of those links as you possibly can.
And this strategy has a fancy name: vertical integration. It's when one single company owns a bunch of different stages of that chain. So for our potato, it means one corporation owns the farms, the factories that make the fries, and maybe even the trucks that deliver them. When you control the whole pipeline like that, you can cut costs and pretty much own the market.
Okay, but you might be wondering, how is it even possible to manage something that huge? Well, that's where the tech comes in. And believe me, modern agribusiness is just as much a tech industry as it is a farming one.
I mean, we are talking about some incredible stuff here. That tractor you see, it's probably driving itself, using GPS, planting seeds with centimeter-perfect accuracy, 24/7. You've got drones flying overhead, basically acting as robot farm managers. Even the seeds themselves are often genetically modified to grow bigger and fight off pests. The whole thing is called precision agriculture, and it lets just a handful of people manage an unbelievable amount of land.
So, what's the big picture result of all this futuristic farming? It has massively boosted the Earth's carrying capacity. That's a term for how many people our planet can actually feed. By getting so much more out of our farmland, we can grow way more food than ever before in history, which is how we support a global population that has basically tripled in just the last 70 years.
And this system isn't just big, it's global. It has woven this incredibly complex web all around the world. Seriously, the food on your dinner plate might just have its own passport. Let's just take your morning coffee. Its adventure might start right here, with coffee beans being grown on a gigantic farm in Brazil. But those beans don't hang around in Brazil. They get shipped all the way across the Atlantic, where they might be roasted and packaged up in a factory somewhere in Europe. And finally, the finished product gets shipped out one more time so it can be sold in a coffee shop right here in North America. That's one product, 3 different continents. Wild, right?
And here is the single most important takeaway from all this. What it means is that the demand for something like soybeans in China has a direct impact on what a farmer in South America decides to plant. A craving for coffee in the US can literally shape the entire economy of a rural town in Brazil. Global decisions are having very, very real local consequences.
So what does that actually look like on the ground? Well, as big ag gets bigger, smaller family farms often get swallowed up or squeezed out. All those machines mean there's less need for human workers, and that fundamentally changes the economy, the culture, and the entire way of life in rural communities all over the world.
Now look, there is no question that this industrial system is incredibly good at making a ton of food for a pretty low price. We all benefit from that. But it really forces us to ask some tough questions. What are the trade-offs we're making for all this cheap, abundant food? And as we look ahead, what does this all mean for the future of our rural communities, our environment, and for the very land that keeps us all alive? It's definitely something to think about.